And just like that, we're back, and the NWHL is back as well, and so are the Toronto Six. I'm Ben Steiner. He's Justin Levine, and we're back with the Toronto Six show. We were the Toronto Six post-game show, but now we're previewing the tournament. We've got Emma Woods coming up later in this segment, but we've got a big tournament and a big playoffs coming up this weekend with the Toronto Six. Justin, welcome back into the show, and it's been a while, eh?
It's only been a while. It's nice to do this again. It's nice to know that the NWHL was so committed to making sure that the Isabel Cup playoffs get finished and completed, unlike last year. So really a pleasure to be able to do this. And, from all interactions with the Toronto Six, really pleased to see where they're at getting here. And, we'll see what the weekend entails.
And Justin, you're working with the Toronto Six now. You weren't working with them when they were in Lake Placid, but now that we're looking at a future playoff and a playoff coming up this weekend, starting off with the game against the Boston Pride. Let's just take a look back at Lake Placid and what really happened there. Can you just give us a bit of a recap?
Yeah, so in terms of what happened in Lake Placid, all was going really swimmingly for the most part, or at least we were to think for, again, I'd say better part of a week and a half. And then last couple of days, the wheels kind of fell off and teams were all of a sudden dealing with a couple of COVID issues. And this was because some teams had players coming in from their home cities or who were supposedly maybe in Lake Placid and just weren't named on the roster because they weren't sure if they're going to use them. Again, a lot of clarity wasn't really something that was given. So a lot of that's kind of give and take with what you think. So again, this ensued as Buffalo brought in Lisa Chesson from Ohio, and then Connecticut brought in 3 or 4 players in addition to their emergency goaltender for the league, which was Mariah Fujimagari. And so as a result of that, Connecticut was then shut down just prior to a game against the Minnesota Whitecaps, who had hit the ice for their warm-up, all of a sudden to find out, hey, Connecticut, they didn't even show up. What? And so that kind of set a tone for the next 24 hours or so. Speaking internally with some people in the NWHL, I was told that things at one point were not looking good. And, as far as, the rest of the tournament, they were kind of contemplating the idea of going home. And then Ty Tuminia met with the media, and that pretty much put a bow on the gift per se.
The NWHL bubble didn't last. It popped when it was in Lake Placid, but it's rejoining in Boston this weekend at the Warrior Ice Arena. And the Toronto Six, the expansion team, they got their first goal in the NWHL bubble in Lake Placid, and we'll take a look at that right now.
Face-off win for the Six. Eastwood puts it in behind the net for Woods. Back out in front. Eastwood with a chance, and she scores! The first goal in Toronto Six history goes to Lindsay Eastwood. And they break out to a 1-0 lead.
Wow, Eastwood, a rookie, to score the first goal for the Six. That's certainly a...
As the commentator said, the first goal in Toronto Six history scored by Syracuse Orange alumnus Lindsay Eastwood. She opened up the scoring early in the tournament for the Toronto Six in their second game, but they went on to lead the NWHL in the brief bubble season, and they're entering this weekend as the first seed, playing the 4th seed Boston Pride. So over the past month or so, what have the Toronto Six really been up to? I know they resumed practice here in Toronto.
Yeah, so initially the players all went home from Lake Placid, and by home I mean to wherever it is that they reside, and that was to get a couple weeks to kind of just recover for those who were diagnosed with COVID-19, and really just to be with their families for a little bit after what was a really great week and a half before everything kind of fell apart. And then practices slowly resumed. It started with Boston, then Toronto, and so on and so forth. And so the Toronto Six players have been practicing as a full team, which is something we didn't hear before Lake Placid, as they were skating at Kenland Ice Sports, but in 2 different squads. So they skate as a full team at the Paramount Iceplex in North York. And, it was a great opportunity that they were able to do that because they got the pro exemption to be able to do things like that. And, now they're just back in action, and, they're flexing and flowing, and they're hungry to really, I guess in a broader sense, is to put the stamp on the box and, make history.
Put the stamp on the box, win the Isabel Cup. And you said they're flexing and flowing. That's something head coach Digit Murphy speaks a lot about when she speaks to the media, and that's exactly what the Toronto Six are doing. But looking ahead to this weekend, they open with the game against the Boston Pride, hoping to advance to the Isabel Cup final. But what do they have to do, and how's this weekend sort of going to work?
All right, so let's start with how, or rather, what do they have to do? So they've got to beat the Boston Pride, obviously, to book their spot into the Isabel Cup final, as seen in the graphic attached. And how they have to do that is they're going to have to get around either goaltender Lovisa Solander or Victoria Hansen. So either way, both goaltenders are really strong. But then again, so is Toronto's and Elaine Chuli, who is a projected starter for Friday night. So, that's the obvious task set before them. And with that, it means that Toronto's offense has to go full force. And lucky for the team, they were able to snatch on Brianne Wilson-Bennett and Taylor Woods to add to their group. However, they will be without two players. But that's not really going to be a struggle for the Toronto Sixers. You know what? They face adversity all season long. And so to get to this point and have most of their team intact is fantastic. So, for those of you who have been rooting for the Toronto Six to get to where they are here. They are hungry, and we'll see a great display on Friday night, and a winner will be named at the end of it. And for those of you Toronto fans watching this, I'm sure you are hoping that's the Six.
And of course, in the other semifinal, trying to get that other spot in the Isabel Cup final is the Minnesota Whitecaps and the Connecticut Whale. Whoever wins that one will face either the Toronto Six or the Boston Pride in the final. So we've got a big weekend of NWHL action coming up in Toronto or in Boston for the Toronto Six. But what are the Toronto Six's chances? I mean, the Boston Pride, they've been a powerhouse in this league for as long as the league has been around. The Toronto Six, they're still the fresh faces on the block. Just yesterday, Digit Murphy said that they still considered themselves underdogs, even though they're coming in as the first seed. So what do the Toronto Six have to do to find success against the Boston Pride in the semifinal?
Honestly, they just have to have their offense clicking for a full 60 minutes. And with that, you can only hope that they're able to achieve it. And they've got all the key pieces going. And what's interesting is you will see some new line shakeups. You'll see the goaltenders standing on their heads. You're going to see everything you would expect out of this Toronto Six organization, and hope that it's enough to carry them into the Isabel Cup final.
And the Toronto Six have been led from the front with Michaela Grant-Mentis. She's been absolutely unbelievable, and we'll take a look at one of her goals right now.
A chance for Six. Around and in. Six for the Six. 6-0 Toronto.
That was a great goal by Michaela Grant-Mentis, who had 9 points throughout the brief NWHL bubble in Lake Placid. But she's one of our three players to watch. I know you had a few that you wanted to watch as well that are going to be true difference makers in the semifinal and potentially the Isabel Cup final.
Right. So one of them is, of course, Michaela Grant-Mentis, who has 9 points so far entering Boston. And, we saw that she was on a hot streak in Lake Placid, and she's going to only look to continue that on Friday night and hopefully get them into a final spot. And then with that, you see Elaine Chuli, the goaltender for Toronto, the projected starter with a .936 save percentage. And then right behind her, a former teammate in hers from the Furies. And once again, now on the Sixth, that's the captain, Cheyenne Darkangelo, who has 4 points and will look to lead this team to victory in Boston if all goes to plan on Friday.
It's definitely a stacked Toronto Six team. We'll see what they can do when they get to Boston, and we're going to have to see what the Toronto Six are able to do in the semifinal and if they can make that final in the Isabel Cup and have a chance as the expansion team. There hasn't been a Toronto team that's won a championship in this city since Toronto FC did it in MLS, but there hasn't been a hockey championship in a long, long time. So taking a look at the Boston Pride, what do you sort of see from them as the challenge for the Toronto Six?
Well, you know what? They've got a ton of strong players. You look at players like Christina Putinha, Jillian Dempsey. They even got back Jenna Rolt, who was taken out with a wrist injury in Lake Placid. She's back and healthy and ready to go. And as Paul Mara said, they expect Boston to be hungrier than ever. And now that they're back to full health, they're going to put on one hell of a competition. And, it's going to come down to every last minute to get the job done. And that really counts for either side, that statement, in terms of, again, getting that full 60 minutes done, knowing what you have to do within those 60 minutes and making sure that the chemistry, again, some of these teams have now been skating for the better part of 3 weeks. So you better hope that chemistry just, it immediately clicks and the team pounces on that and, off to the races they go.
And we spoke to Taylor Woods earlier this week, and we're going to run an interview just after this. But reminder to all of you guys watching at home, feel free to send us your thoughts on the Toronto Six and how they're going to do this weekend. Of course, the Friday night game against the Boston Pride. But here, right now, is Taylor Woods. Justin and I are now very happy to be welcoming Toronto Six player Taylor Woods into the Toronto Six pre-tournament show. Welcome to the show, Taylor. How you been doing?
Thank you. It's been good. Sort of just trying to get things together for Boston, trying to get things good for going so I could just focus on hockey when I'm there.
And what sort of thing you're looking forward to heading down to Boston?
Just playing with the team again, that whole team camaraderie, like on the bench, and then just sort of recapturing like how we dominated and how we were sort of establishing our game on the ice and off the ice.
Let's talk about, kind of the downtime between Lake Placid and where we are now heading into Boston this week, because a lot has happened. Obviously, the COVID breakdown, which sent the Lake Placid bubble, if you will, into a downward spiral. But now that we're going into the championship weekend, what have you been doing, yourself to prepare? You're based in Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
What have you been doing to prepare just alone, in addition to obviously the skates at the Paramount Iceplex here in North York?
Yeah, fortunately, I still had that little bit of a hockey itch after the championship. I was like, oh, man, like something that we really wanted to finish. So been sort of stick handling my work. I'm very fortunate to have like a small shooting pad and a training facility to sort of work, get myself into shape that I need, work on anything that sort of what I felt that were like holes in my game. So, and I felt even when I was on the ice, is like I'm thinking about things quicker. I'm sort of making stick handling and shooting quicker. So I think it's only an advantage. I'm very excited to see how this little bit of work goes into the championship weekend.
I know we definitely see a lot of your athletic pursuits on Instagram with your Taylor Woods training as well. But looking at your past experiences in hockey with the Markham Thunder, where you won the Clarkson Cup, are there any ideas that you have or takeaways going into this playoffs from that Clarkson Cup run?
We had a solid team, and like even like going up to that run, like when we had everyone together, it's just like we knew, like you felt it, you had the vibes, you had the excitement, and it's like, okay, this is the team that's going to win. Even though came in as like a fourth seed, we're coming in as a first seed, and it's like, oh, but we're still like, hey, we're the new kids on the block, and there's that vibe, there's that sort of energy and that electricity. So it feels right. It feels like we're the team, and we're going to show that.
So now you enter Boston, playing the home team, the Boston Pride, Friday night. What do you have to do to get around the Pride based on the last game that was played in Lake Placid?
They had just offensively, I know they forced and they put a lot of pressure. So just knowing where to put the puck, knowing sort of where people are, and then just sort of pushing our game. I think we played best playing our game, not trying to play someone else's game. So pushing the pace, saying this is T6 hockey, and also just getting shot on the net.
And are there any more nerves playing in front of a national TV crowd now on NBC Sports? Or is it just sort of nerves that you'd have anyways?
Live the moment, right? Live, thrive in it, and just go for it.
Speaking further to TV, in addition to NBC, all these games are streamed for free on twitch.tv/NWHL, where they can continue to be found through this weekend. And these games go so far that there are people tuning in from, Germany, Austria, and all places across Europe. So can you talk about what that means to you to have that support literally across the globe?
That's huge. Like when we talk about like growing the game and growing it beyond even the outskirts of North America, and having that outreach with Twitch is amazing. I know there's a few players in the past that have played overseas. I know there's players that are from overseas that I've played with before. So anything to help grow the sport and sort of promote the game is a huge advantage and a plus.
And heading into this bubble, I know in the last one, there were a lot of celebrations. There was the tiny hands, there was the dancing in the locker room. Do you think that there's going to be any adjustment to that with some of the new protocols that have been put in for this bubble?
I think the T6 energy is still going to be the T6 energy. Of course, like the COVID protocols are going to be in play. So watching, just being safe, social distancing and whatnot. But I think that energy is going to be there. We started off in cohorts anyway when practicing, and we're like the tightest team ever.
And we talk a lot about that energy, especially when it comes to the practices, again, taking place as a full team now at Paramount rather than split teams which obviously you've experienced as well at Kenlin Ice Sports. So can you talk about where that energy feeds from? Because obviously we know Digit Murphy is probably one of the most energetic hockey coaches to ever live. And she just, it adds another element and gets you guys kind of, riled up, I guess. So, how much does that assist in just the energy that you guys alone get from being, again, a full team together?
Huge. I think even just like during this time and during this pandemic is like, hey, everyone sort of wants to find that energy, wants to find that joy, and Digits, she's brought it every single practice, and it's like, hey, this is the time that we need it. She makes those small little jokes like all over the place when we need it. So it's a good balance as it comes. I think even too, like on the ice, like even last practice, like our intensity was up there. It was like gameplay. So if we keep sort of pushing that forward, it's going to be hard to play on the ice.
And has practice been any different preparing for this tournament versus preparing for the tournament before?
Yeah, like, like we were trying to get through a lot of systems before, but I think it's like, hey, like, we know that let's just try to find our flow, our game, just that chemistry again, and sort of build off of that.
And as a personal goal, looking beyond this this upcoming weekend, what are you sort of aiming for the off season, and then potentially heading into a season 7 where you'd be playing at home, hopefully?
Yeah, hopefully we get to play at home. Like that dressing room that they got for us is amazing. It's so professional. I'm just trying to focus on the weekend. I just want to be riled up. I am going to bring in all efforts, and then once the time comes, then the time comes in that off season. But 2 games to play, 2 games to win, 2 games to bring balls of fury. So
another leader for this team is very obviously Elaine Truly in the net, who is, a brick wall, if you will. Can you talk about the superb job that she did in Lake Placid and just the kind of the skill set that she brings, which I think is definitely a statement of the Toronto Six?
Yeah, she is definitely a brick wall. I know, like when I'm back there, like I could be flying all over the place. I could try to be goalie sometimes, or I could try to do things, and she stays nice and collected. She makes the saves that we need to save, and then all of a sudden she flies across the net and makes more saves. So she's definitely it helps ease my mind. It's like, hey, I could make a play here. Hey, I could go rush the puck, or it eases my mind a lot. So, and I know that she's saved us in a lot of games when we were in Lake Placid.
And maybe we'll wrap with this. Tyler Tumminia, the interim commissioner of the National Women's Hockey League, you look at what she's done. She was brought in a lot of because of her skill set in marketing and sponsorships, and because she could secure a TV deal, and she did that. It wasn't a full year, but it was enough to put on the premier games, which are the final 3. So can you talk about her leadership, because she was involved with the Toronto Six as the chairwoman, and then she was named to the commissioner's table, and look what she's done so far. So what has she meant to you?
She is so ambitious. Just everything she's done. I don't know how many hours of sleep she's had, but she's done a tremendous job for the players, the league, and getting the TV deal just shows more exposure for the game, and that's sort of what we need, especially now. The more time that we get on TV, the more that we can sort of share and grow the sport, and even just have conversations around the sport and women's sports in general. So she's been, I don't even know, she's been doing a lot for us. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Taylor, and best of luck in the playoffs with the Toronto Six. And Justin and I will be back covering this entire tournament and the entire playoffs with the Toronto Six postgame show right here. Good luck, Taylor.
Thank
Good
you.
luck, Taylor.
Well, that was our interview with Taylor Woods that we did yesterday. Thank you again to Taylor Woods of the Toronto Six for joining us here on the Toronto Six show ahead of the semifinal and final of the Isabel Cup playoffs down in Boston. Justin, what do you think of some of the things that Taylor just said?
Honestly, look, Taylor is fantastic. I've known her for a couple of years now, and she didn't beat around the bush. She said exactly what they need to get done. Despite any challenges, she's spoken very highly of the staff, including again Ty Tumminia, as heard in the final question. And she knows what she's here to get done, and the fact that she's again, like everyone else, sacrificing whatever time with her day job to be able to take part in this is truly amazing. Because again, women's hockey is not in the same place as men's hockey. So, being able to pull off such a big event and, doing it despite these challenges is incredible. And so for that reason, a kudos to everyone taking part in this event.
Yeah, she's down in Boston with the rest of the Toronto Six. They arrived, I think you said it was about an hour ago, and they're getting ready to play, of course, their semifinal against the Boston Pride on this Friday. But looking ahead to this game, Michaela Grant-Mentes, who has been one of the main players for this Toronto Six team, we looked at a goal of hers earlier, but she's on a new line for this weekend.
Yeah, she is. She will be playing with Cheyenne Darkangelo and Emma Woods, who are two of the three people who captain the Toronto Six. Now, as you see here in the graphic, in Lake Placid, she played alongside Amy Curlew and Sarah Evkatu Godbout on what was dubbed as the kid line. And so, yes, it's a change, but apparently at practice, as I was told, it just clicked. And so they're going to try it. And, Michaela's going to do what she does best, and that is being an offensive leader and a contributor who doesn't back down. And that, along with anything else that the Toronto Six are able to pull out of their hat, per se, on Friday, will put the icing on the cake and allow the Toronto Six to enter a spot in the final.
And she's been fantastic so far in this season for the Toronto Six. 6 games, 9 points. There's even been talk about her potentially making Team Canada, and she would be one of the rare NWHLers to do so, with most of those players coming from the PWHPA. Do you think, we'll take a bit of a tangent now, do you think that she can make Team Canada?
That's a good question. You know what? She's very talented. I think at the very least she gets a shot with Hockey Canada with the national women's team. I would be over the moon if she was in fact selected. I think that she's got enough skill to be able to be named to a national team roster. So, yes, I do. And, look, this is only the beginning for Michaela, and I can't wait to see the great things that she's going to continue to do.
She's definitely been doing well for the Toronto Six this season and still quite young. She has a lot more to go in her career. She might not be ready for Team Canada just yet, but especially if we get a unified women's league, she would be ready to go. But back to the Toronto Six, if they make it past Boston, what's their outlook in the final?
That's a great question, only because, again, we don't know who they're going to play yet, and nor do they. It could be Connecticut. It could be Minnesota. It's unknown. So maybe let's start with Connecticut. Connecticut is missing a few players, as Laura Brennan told us in the media conference yesterday. But with that, they did gain the likes of Melissa Samoskevich, who is a U.S. national team member, and she was not with the team in Lake Placid due to a commitment with her job at Penn State. But now she's able to join, and she replaces the likes of Janine Weber, who is an Austrian national team member, who may have gotten injured at the end of the Lake Placid tournament, as she is out with what is believed to be a lower body injury. Then Laura Brennan also said that those who couldn't make it or have opted out, they're going to keep that close to the vest for now. So could that be a really good thing for Toronto? Yes, it could be, because depending on who those players are, it might just be enough for Toronto's firepower to overtake them and lock down the championship. But if it's Minnesota, they're an interesting case, because they also have a few players who might be missing from action, but they do gain the likes of Amanda Boulier, who was supposed to play the last game against Connecticut in Lake Placid, again, as mentioned, before things fell apart, only to have that one game she was supposed to play canceled minutes before it started. So with that, Ali Thunstrom and the likes of their goaltending, Amanda Levier and Ali Morse, that's stiff competition. And we have to remember that last they played, Toronto went up on them, I believe it was 4-1 or 5-1, and then Minnesota made this comeback and took them into a win in the shootout, which was really an incredible game to bear witness to. So they've certainly a stiff competition. If it's Connecticut, I think it's an easier win, easier said than done for Toronto to rightfully bring home the Isabel Cup and to make history.
It would certainly be impressive. And Toronto's coming in with a bit of a different roster as well. They're missing a couple players.
Yeah, they're missing Tatum Claremont and Mackenzie McNeil, as seen here in today's official Toronto Six roster. I mean, look, both of them were really great in the last 2 games. Mackenzie McNeil had a pair of goals. And then Tatum Claremont in the same game scored her first. So, both were just starting to pick up their offensive momentum, but they're going to make do. And this is a talented team, don't get me wrong. So I don't think there's a whole lot to worry about here. I think there's plenty of offensive power, and I think it'll be enough to push them. And how far they go, that's up to them. We'll find out.
We'll definitely find out how far they'll go. And if they do make the Isabel Cup final, this team has a lot of great quality, not just skill-wise, but also experience-wise and championship caliber across the roster. There's been NWHL championships. There's been Clarkson Cup championships in the CWHL that's no longer around. So if they make the final, how important is this going to be?
It's going to be very important. And if we take a look at who those players are, we see from the CWHL, Taylor Woods, who is, again, participating at this tournament for the final. She won a Clarkson Cup with the Markham Thunder back in 2018. So did Jenna McParland and Kristen Barbara. Then Julie Allen also won one with the Toronto Furies. Again, McParland being the odd one out here, not participating this season due to commitment on the front lines as we continue to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic. And then from the NWHL side, you see Cheyenne Darkangelo, who won one at the Buffalo Buttes, where she kind of got her start in the National Women's Hockey League, though she did also play with the Connecticut Whale at one point coming out of Quinnipiac. And then Emily Fluke is a weird one because she almost did. They got, again, we have to remember that they got 1 game robbed from them last season, which was the final. They got as far as the final, and then the NWHL brings down the hammer after consultation with NYU Langone Health, their official health partner, saying this cannot be played, even though they were, at one point negotiations were, okay, what if we just do it with no fans? But with the uprise in numbers, even, arena staff and such, it was too much risk. So.
And at that point, we were still calling it the coronavirus. You just look how far we've come in 1 year, and they were determined to get this final off in Lake Placid. That didn't happen. So they're going to Boston now to get this final off, and we'll finally see the Isabel Cup lifted up. But with Emily Fluke, she sort of won it last year. She sort of didn't. So maybe it was a bit of a fluke, bad pun there. But that's why she has the asterisk next to her name on our little graphic. But this upcoming weekend plans to be exciting for the Toronto Six. And what are a few things that you're excited for, and maybe a quick prediction of who's going to come home with the Isabel Cup?
All right, so a couple things I'm excited for. Number one is the hot streak of Macaulay Grant-Mentis, because again, as I heard from practice, she's a talent that only continues to rise. And so I have no question in my mind that we're going to see her pick up where she left off. And then with that, Brooke Boquist was just getting started. We saw a pair of goals from her in Lake Placid. And look, in Sweden, before she came to the Toronto Six, she was an offensive juggernaut. And, being known as well to Emma Woods as well as Samantha Ridgewell in Sweden, both of them were able to echo that statement. So I'm excited to see her return as well, as she was on the COVID list for the Toronto Six at the end, where they lost Woods, Boquist, and Barbara. So I think those are two of the most important storylines. And then again, just Elaine Chuli being the brick wall and net that she was, which got them into the number 1 seed before the so-called bubble in Lake Placid collapsed.
And give us one word. Who's going to win this tournament?
I don't want to be biased here, but you look at this team and the storyline. How sweet would it be to see history made with an inaugural team, especially with all the adversity that they're facing, given that they're also the only team who has to do a hard 14-day quarantine upon their return, and what is believed to be at least a hard 2-day quarantine in Boston before everything gets started. Will they get a practice in? I've heard that's a possibility, but again, you see the challenges, you see the inaugural aspect. It would just be such a welcome and great finish, and a thrill, especially with this whole COVID-19 pandemic itself, to have Toronto come home bearing that cup on their bus, and then maybe in a small community thing or something. I mean, look, I can't imagine it, but what I can imagine is the Toronto Six capturing the cup, and oh, how sweet it would be.
So you've got the Toronto Six capturing the cup. I would love to see it as well. Of course, we are the Toronto Six show, and I'm sure that we would both be very happy, as well as our viewers and the fans of the Toronto Six. But I just don't believe things until I see it. So I'm not putting any money on the Toronto Six to bring home this trophy. They're still the inaugural team. They don't have all that much playoff experience as a team. They're missing a couple players. So I would think that I'm going to go with a bit of a more veteran squad, and I'm going to pick the Boston Pride. I think the Toronto Six are going to put up a good fight, but they're not going to get past the Boston Pride, and whoever Boston plays in the final, whether that be Minnesota or Connecticut, they're going to come out as winners and hoisting the NWHL's Isabel Cup. That's really all we've got for you today. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Toronto Six Show. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Taylor Woods. For Justin Levine, I'm Ben Steiner. We'll see you after the first game between the Toronto Six and the Boston Pride.